if you're one of those 1 out of 4 women who miscarry, or 1 of 8 women who suffer some form of infertility, if you are one of those for whom pregnancy has not been a joyous experience, or if you have experienced child loss, our story today is hard. But despite my hesitation, I would invite us to listen to Hannah's story this morning, particularly exactly because it is the story of so many of us. My hope is that our time together will bear witness to suffering and not exacerbate it. If what I talk about today makes you uncomfortable, please take care of yourself. If you're suffering silently right now, I invite you to please reach out to Melody or I. We can sit with you and cry with you, and if needed, connect with you with additional support. Regardless, please know we see you. You're not alone. Please pray with me. Holy God, today we hear a story of someone who has known hurt, who has carried shame, who has lived with grief and invisible pain, who has felt alone and ignored, who has seen the depths of suffering. As we listen, we will be reminded of the hurt we have carried ourselves during these days. Memories and regrets commingling in our chests. And as we listen, we will be reminded that our neighbors, our siblings in faith, also come to this space carrying burdens. So dust off our ears and stretch open the canvases of our hearts so that in our pain we might lean into one another as we lean into you. Pull us close. We are listening. Amen. There was a certain man from Ramathaim, a Suphite from the highlands of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah. He was from the tribe of Ephraim, and he was the son of Jeroham, son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Suph. Elkanah had 2 wives, one named Hannah, and the other named Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah didn't. Every year this man would leave his town to worship and sacrifice to the Lord of heavenly forces in Shiloh, where Eli's 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were the Lord's priests. Whenever he sacrificed, Elkanah would give parts of the sacrifice to his wife Peninnah and to all her sons and daughters, but he would give a double part of it to Hannah because he loved her. Because the Lord had kept her from conceiving. And because the Lord had kept Hannah from conceiving, her rival would make fun of her mercilessly just to bother her. So that is what took place year after year. Whenever Hannah went to the Lord's house, Peninnah would make fun of her. Then she would cry and wouldn't eat anything. Hannah, why are you crying? Her husband Elkanah would say to her. Why won't you eat? Why are you so sad? Aren't I worth more to you than 10 sons? One time after eating and drinking in Shiloh, Hannah got up and presented herself before the Lord. Now Eli the priest was sitting in the chair by the doorpost of the Lord's temple. Hannah was very upset and couldn't stop crying as she prayed to the Lord. Then she made this promise. Lord of heavenly forces, just look at your servant's pain and remember me. Don't forget your servant. Give her a boy, then I'll give him to the Lord for his entire life. No razor will ever touch his head. As she kept praying before the Lord, Eli watched her mouth. Now Hannah was praying in her heart. Her lips were moving, but her voice was silent. So Eli thought she was drunk. How long will you act like a drunk? Sober up, Eli told her. No, sir, Hannah replied. I'm just a very sad woman. I haven't had any wine or beer, but have been pouring out my heart to the Lord. Don't think your servant is some good-for-nothing woman. This whole time, I've been praying out of my great worry and trouble." Eli responded, "Then go in peace, and may the God of Israel give you what you've asked from him." "Please think well of me, your servant," Hannah said. And the woman went on her way, ate some food, and wasn't sad any longer. This is the word of the Lord. Where does it hurt? This has become the question for the work of civil rights activist Ruby Sales. Where does it hurt? In a conversation with Krista Tippett in On Being, she recalls the very moment this question first came to her. She was getting her locks washed, and her locker's daughter came in one morning, and she had been hustling all night. She says she had sores on her body, and she was just in a state drugs. So something said to me, ask her, where does it hurt? And I said, Shelley, where does it hurt? And just that simple question unleashed territory in her that she had never shared with her mother. She talked about all of the things that had happened to her as a child. And she literally shared the source of her pain. Where does it hurt? Reverend Brittany Fiscus Van Rossum, who is pastor at Mercy Connection Church in Atlanta, calls this a humanizing question because it reminds us that all our human experience knows pain. But also because this question acknowledges that pain that you are feeling is real, is legitimate. It's a daunting question, one I wouldn't always be ready to answer. Maybe the hurt you feel had been ridiculed by a Peninnah or questioned and dismissed by an Elkanah, like, why are you so sad? What about me? Don't you have plenty of reason to be happy? Others have it worse. We still have plenty of reasons to be grateful. Maybe you internalized Eli's stern look and you think that what you're feeling is out of place here. And maybe you even started to believe that it shouldn't be here. Not here at church, not in public, not at home, not in your body. That your pain was wrong, that something is wrong with you. In that sense, where does it hurt is the humanizing question that gives me back my humanity. It acknowledges that what you're feeling is legitimate. Now, I know this is easier preached about than lived, because where does it hurt is also a very scary question. I don't know, have you ever not wanted to ask someone that question? What if I can't deal with what I get to hear? It makes me uncomfortable. Or what if I end up saying stupid things and make things worse, like unhelpful Elkanah? The temptation to be quiet and say nothing, to just better not bring it up, is always there. But maybe for the most, the fear is that I won't have a solution or an answer or a fix. And that's scary because we would love to jump over pain and sadness and fix what's wrong. As the book says, clean it, kiss it, put a bandage on it, all better. If it only were that easy, right? All better. Well, maybe not all is well, but I do believe that something does happen with this question. Where does it hurt? And not just for children. It's the question of sacred attention, because it does give permission to acknowledge pain, to feel feelings, that there is no right or wrong way to feel. Where does it hurt means I see you, I love you, you are safe with me. what you're feeling is real. And you are allowed to be here. In our text, it's that moment when Eli finally begins to listen instead of making assumptions. It's in that moment when Hannah's experience begins to change. When someone acknowledges her pain. When she, in dignity and honesty, gets to share her story. And even as Eli himself is not able to provide an immediate solution for Hannah, he is able to accept her hurt and bless her in her pain. Where does it hurt? It may not be all better, but maybe a little better. Because I do believe if we are to be the people who bring peace and healing to this world, into our community, it's going to happen through our sacred attention, our courageous questions, by being willing to pause and bear witness to pain, to our own and the pain of others. Even if we can't fix it, even if we don't know yet an answer, nor what's next. Even if all we can do is maybe ramble and sputter things like, "I'm so sorry, tell me more. What you're saying makes a lot of sense. I want to hold this space with you. You're not alone. I see you. You're safe here." Amen.
Us peace, which I think fits beautifully this morning.
Good morning. My name is Olivia, and I am a community organizer with the Interfaith Justice Coalition called Justice in Action. I know many of you have heard about Justice in Action and attended our Nehemiah Assembly in May, but I am here to explain a bit about how we got here, where we are headed as we start our second annual cycle of Justice in Action. So we first organized by speaking with leaders and clergy here in Lincoln and Lancaster County to see if there was an interest in doing justice together, and we found out overwhelmingly, yes, many faith communities wanted to do justice together. So in the fall of 2022, leaders from over 20 different faith communities here in Lancaster County held small group listening sessions where people shared what local community issues kept them up at night. These leaders asked their friends and fellow churchgoers, what keeps you up at night worrying, and what makes you angry about our community? So what are some of the things that we heard? Well, we heard concerns about access to mental health care. We heard concerns about lack of affordable housing. We heard our neighbors concerned about quality and affordable elder care. Folks were worried about crowding at the jail and disparities in the criminal justice system. People shared concerns for substance abuse issues, suicide, and homelessness. These leaders held these meetings as a part of our annual process for Justice in Action. And Justice in Action works within the model of Direct Action Research Training, or DART for short, to uncover and address injustices in our community. For 40 years, DART organizers, now active in over 30 cities, have been helping improve their communities with a model inspired by the story of Nehemiah. Because the prophet Micah tells us in chapter 6, verse 8, that what the Lord requires of us as people of faith is to 1, do justice, 2, love mercy, and 3, walk humbly with God. The story of Nehemiah tells us how to do justice. It provides us with a model of organizing ordinary people to take on powerful systems that are causing suffering in today's world. Thus, why our action each year is aptly named the Nehemiah Assembly. So our organization follows the model of Nehemiah by starting each fall with a listening process, where we hear the cries of the people, and then those who shared their concerns are invited to gather for a community assembly where we vote on the issues to take on the following year. So in November of last year, our faith communities, including Eastridge, gathered and voted to address our broken mental health care system and our criminal justice system. So from there, interested individuals helped facilitate a research process where we dove deeply into these issues. We met with local experts, we read reports, and looked at best practices across the country. Those groups narrowed these giant issues of mental health and criminal justice into more manageable questions that we eventually asked our elected officials to support. So at our Nehemiah Assembly in May, which many of you were at, we asked our local elected officials to support the creation and implementation of a county-wide mental health navigation system. Too often, people are left feeling hopeless and unable to access the care they need for themselves or their children. We also asked our elected officials to increase access to diversion programs, which are basically programs that give incarcerated people the rehabilitation they need instead of continued incarceration. Lucky for us, in Lancaster County, our diversion programs are very successful, which means when people get the care they need, they are less likely to return to jail and more likely to go on to live positive and productive lives. On the mental health side of things, we received yeses from our elected officials agreeing to work with us. And on the criminal justice side of things, we learned that Community Corrections, which is the department here in Lancaster County that runs these diversion programs, was in the process of hiring a new director. So where are we right now, and why am I here today? Well, our mental health team is making progress on the mental health navigation program. They've been meeting with elected officials from the county board and the city council to look at best practices from other counties and discuss how that might work best for us here in Lincoln and Lancaster County. And on the criminal justice side of things, we have met with County Attorney Pat Condon to discuss increasing our successful diversion programs. We have also been monitoring the hiring of a new community corrections director. This new director actually starts tomorrow, and so we plan to be the first community group reaching out to meet with him. So what's happening next? Well, we will be hosting listening sessions again this fall, and we are excited to be hosting some right here at Eastridge. These listening sessions are a great way to build relationships with others here in your community and have conversations about injustice and how that affects everyone. Your justice ministry leaders will be reaching out to you to participate in this process and have these conversations, and I really hope you give it a chance. We've heard that the listening sessions and having conversations about injustice for many was a really important part of the process. So I want to thank you for giving me some time to speak about these issues and justice in action. I will be hanging out after service today, so if you want to have a conversation or ask any questions, I will be here. Thank you.
On my best days, I believe that God is there, standing in the sun with me, laughing a contagious laugh and cheering me on. On my hardest days, I believe that God is there, standing in the rain with me, holding me up and sharing my grief. No matter where I go, in joy or in loss, in pain or in love, in heartache or in gratitude, I believe that God is there, leaning in, noticing where it hurt, and carrying me through. And so I believe we are called to care for each other as God cares for us. On your best days in the sun and on your worst days in the rain, I will do my best to be there for you too. Family of faith, it does not take long to look around the world and point out places of pain and suffering. This year has been hard for so many, but I do not believe that pain will be the last word. Each week in our service, you are invited to give the mission and ministry of this church. When you give, you are not only supporting this congregation, but you are offering care to the broader community, leaning in, asking the hard questions, choosing connections, and choosing generosity. It is these small acts of care, connection, and love that in time can heal the hurt in the world. So friends, I've been meaning to ask, will you give your offering now? Let us give with a grateful heart. Would the ushers please come forward?
When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and the depths of the river shall not overwhelm. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. I am the Lord. I am the Lord, and there is nothing to fear, nothing to fear, there is nothing to fear, nothing to fear, for I am with you always. In the depths
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
Will you join me in the first verse? Blessed be the tie that binds. Please stand. Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love, the fellowship of kindred minds is like to that of love. We've had a lot going on this morning. And I cannot, by anything that's good and holy, have a short sermon, I guess. Thank you for bearing with us. Thank you for being here this morning, for engaging. And we invite you to continue to engage, to stick around, to have fellowship. There is food out here. There are cookies that look like pencils. There is amazing things that invite us to stay, to ask tender and courageous questions. So friends, I charge you, as you leave this place, may God grant you the curiosity to counter assumptions, the vulnerability to befriend, the bravery to speak your truth, the wisdom to listen, the strength to ask for help, the resiliency to choose love, even when it's hard. And the awareness of the Holy Spirit always beside you. In the name of the great connector, love itself, go in peace. Amen.